talk about a topic that first of all, I kind of made up the terminology, and I thought it would be interesting to share it as I, create this channel that's about freelance journalism and just journalism in general. The topic is about spiritual wellness versus emotional wellness. So what's the difference? I think it's important to touch base about what both of them mean separately. So emotional wellness involves the awareness, understanding, and acceptance of one's feelings. And so if you're having a bad day and that's interfering with how you complete an assignment or manage your workplace, so that's emotional wellness. And there's a lot of ways to cope with that, but I will touch base with that soon. Emotional wellness is something that's more in the present moment, and so it's how you're feeling at this time. It's not your personality, it's just the way you feel. We get to spiritual wellness, that goes more into your values, beliefs, and everything that you've believed in since childhood, and also what you believe is your purpose in life. I think a lot of your spiritual wellness really merges with your integrity. And I think integrity is, I think, a subject that I would definitely touch more base on as time goes by. Getting into spiritual wellness, that's when you reconnect with yourself. You reconnect, and spiritual wellness does not necessarily mean that you have to confine or to some religion in any way. You do not have to restrain yourself to a religion. You don't have to find a religion to have spiritual wellness. That's not what it means. That's a misconception. I define spiritual wellness as being able to acknowledge that you have a purpose in life and finding out what that purpose is, even if you don't know it yet. Knowing that you have something to strive for based on your values and beliefs, that's enough to be able to keep you persistent in figuring out what that purpose is. These times it's very hard for people to be able to find themselves because there's a lot of things going on that keeps us up on our feet to constantly solve day-to-day issues that we can't even make that time to reflect on ourselves. And it's very easy to lose sight of our identity, our core identity, our inner child. That's what it is, our inner child. It's very easy for us to lose our inner child when we're so caught up to day-to-day adult responsibilities. And I feel like you've probably heard it before. Someone in your life has at least told you that, hey, adulting sucks. It's such a day-to-day responsibility that you don't have time to be, a kid, or you don't have time to enjoy kid things. And yeah, it's not true. Through exploring your inner child, you will be able to understand why it is that you're still doing this job, specifically journalism, in the first place. A vicious cycle can make you lose sight of who you are. And usually those vicious cycles tend to be you find an outlet to escape. Any of those times, the outlet is either school or work for a lot of people. What people fail to notice is their escape from their problems is also an escape from finding out who they really are, or escaping who they really are. Interestingly enough, ignoring a lot of personal issues in our life is actually pushing us further from who we are, who we are as a person, how we define ourselves before we ever got into a career, before we ever considered one in college. Understanding more about spiritual wellness is also, you start to find those places as an escape instead of confronting any other obstacles that are in the way that is aside from any career-related issues. When you don't face issues that are aside from those typical issues that you face, you go on autopilot mode, and eventually getting used to having an escape and finding a comfort in that escape. Boring as the daily repetitive routine gets, that's at least something that you begin to find as your comfort zone. That's a dangerous zone, actually. Opinion, by the way. That's a dangerous zone because you begin to not only escape from your daily struggles that are outside of the workplace, you also begin to conform to the same skills and strategies that you know to use since the past goodness knows. When you begin to get used to adapting the same strategies or skills to use in the workplace, you begin to have those expectations for others as well. You fail to see further of what other innovative skills can be offered for your modern day career. Not being receptive to what others can offer can really hamper you in a lot of ways. It can really sabotage your self-growth. Not being receptive to, hearing other ideas that others can have, that is something that you've never thought of using as a strategy before, because the same strategy has always worked for you. So you're thinking, why change it, And of course, changing your strategy is not the same way as changing your skills. You can't change your skills. That's something that comes with you. But you explore different strategies from other people. It's important to consider extra or additional strategies that others have that you don't. Especially if you're in a leader position. You're taught to teach others what you know. And often what you know, you don't expect others to know more than that. Not trying to speak for everyone, but that's typically how it does go in leadership. You're managing a lot of things. You're managing how others are doing their own work, and it's very easy to lose sight of yourself. The problem when you're in autopilot in a leadership role is that you tend to start having missed opportunities in your career. You have missed opportunities, you tend to also lose sight of what creativity can come in the process of discovering those opportunities that you missed. That's why it's very important to hear what the newest generation, the young generation, what they have to offer in regards to their skills, and what type of ideas they can put on the table that you might have never heard of before. Interestingly enough, I tend to lose sight of new details in and out of the workplace. A lot of the habits or repetitive behaviors that you take on the workplace, whether those are good or bad behaviors, eventually that does tend to submerge itself into the person that you are today. The longer that you've been coping a certain way, the harder it's going to be to reverse those habits or those traits that you're used to bringing into the workplace. You tend to adapt some bad traits over time, and some of those traits can be remaining square-minded, failure to see details that are not something that you're used to seeing because you might have not wanted to hear about it in the first place, or it didn't interest you enough, or you might have not been curious enough to want to explore it. The issues that can rise if you stay on autopilot mode. Eventually, over time, having this autopilot mode mindset can eventually affect your relationships, not only in the workplace, but out in the workplace. Many of us fail to realize that we need to take a break from what we're used to, and oftentimes we're so used to dealing with it that it overwhelms us, but we're used to being overwhelmed because we're in that autopilot mode. It's hard to explain, but that itself can affect your mood. Just being caught up and just feeling dried out on the day-to-day stressors that others feed into that, and that includes your personal relationships with people. So that's something to really much keep in mind if you do have others that are with you and you see them on a day-to-day basis. So it's important to keep yourself in check. autopilot mode can over time also lead to external validation. When you're in a workplace, a lot of external validation that you find is through mirrored feedback. And when I say mirrored feedback, that is very subjective depending on the position that you're taking. A lot of external validation comes from expecting feedback that you've given to others, and it doesn't have to be the same person that gave you that feedback, but maybe expecting that when you give feedback, you're hoping at least someone or the person that you're giving feedback to would notice, and eventually the same would happen to you in return. That is external validation, because a lot of us don't actually notice when we are craving those type of things. But that's dangerous, because that's also a mental type of codependency that's kind of not, it's kind of hidden. That's something internal. It's an internal I feel like that's kind of an external validation that turns into something internal over time, because you're expecting feedback constantly from those that are around you. As a consequence of long-term conformities, struggle with the idea of new innovations in the workplace affecting our ego. Last thing you want is your ego to be affected, because that's part of how we maintain our personal identity. Identifying ourselves as the people in our workplace is unhealthy, but it's also easy to lose sight of resisting this type of change. Life gets too hectic to manage. As I mentioned, ego is essentially the umbrella term for self-esteem and confidence. From what I previously said, I'm not saying to live a double life in and out of the workplace, but to find an equilibrium between knowing who you are and what you like in your personality, and how you're going to integrate your personality in the workplace.